Welcome to Debate Combats, where two sharp teams tackle a future shaped by faith, forests, and frontier biotech. Our motion asks whether, centuries from now, faith-led coalitions should use gene editing and de-extinction to restore rainforests, rallying support through social media simply because the technology makes it possible. Think CRISPR trees designed to resist blight, revived pollinators to jumpstart webs of life, and digital campaigns that turn belief into boots on the ground. The affirmative argues that if we can responsibly do it, we should, using transparent oversight, community consent, and long-horizon planning. The negative warns that power mixed with piety and virality risks unintended ecological cascades, moral hazard, and manipulative messaging. On the progressive bench stands the affirmative, and on the conservative bench stands the negative. Let us begin with the affirmative case. Leader, the floor is yours.
Our thesis is simple. Forests that took millennia to mature may need engineered boosts to survive millennia ahead, and faith communities can steward that work with duty and discipline.
People listen when values meet vision, and social media turns Sunday talk into weekday action, from seed drives to citizen science.
Gene editing can harden canopy species against heat and pathogens, accelerating natural selection without replacing it.
When a trusted coalition explains the change clearly, families share it, teens test apps, and elders track tree health, which builds social roots to match the biological ones.
De-extinction is not nostalgia, it is ecological repair, because missing pollinators and dispersers leave holes that no sermon or fence can fill.
Hope scales when stories do, so short videos that show seedlings thriving and streams returning can turn cautious curiosity into patient support.
We propose strict governance, including pre-registration of edits, red team stress tests, reversible gene drives, and open ecological ledgers that anyone can audit.
Transparency makes belief a bridge, not a blindfold, because people can check dashboards, ask questions, and change course without shame.
Waiting for perfect certainty is choosing slow decline, so we act with bounded risk, pilot plots, and sunset clauses tied to measurable biodiversity gains.
If the future will judge us, let it be for planting brave forests, not for writing timid footnotes while habitats burn.
For these reasons, if we can do this safely and openly, we ought to, and faith-led networks are uniquely positioned to recruit care, time, and trust across centuries.
We urge a vote for the motion, because power with humility is still power for good.
Thank you, affirmative. And now we invite the negative to present its case. Leader, please proceed.
The promise of control is the oldest myth in the forest, because ecosystems are tapestries woven by time, not templates for our latest update.
Risk is not a vibe, it is math, and complex networks with unknown nodes make prediction fragile, especially when edits propagate beyond intended bounds.
When spiritual authority blesses a tool, dissent becomes heresy, and social media can turn caution into a cancelable offense overnight.
Virality optimizes for engagement, not truth, so dashboards can become theater while feedback loops reward confident errors.
De-extinction confuses symbol with system, because reviving a charismatic species may soothe guilt while masking soil loss, logging, and corruption.
The precautionary path is not paralysis, it is priority, so protect old growth, fund rangers, cut illegal markets, and let recovery follow known baselines.
If we normalize editing because we can, we invite mission creep, from resilience tweaks to aesthetic edits that rewrite creation in our image.
Governance buzzwords do not equal governance, and reversible drives are promises made to physics, which does not sign contracts.
Centuries are long enough for regret to become permanent, so humility means saying no when uncertainty is systemic, not parameterized.
Vote against the motion and choose conservation that strengthens what exists, rather than gambling on engineered hope amplified by algorithms.
We pivot to the affirmative for a focused push.
If you fear hype, target the hype with facts, because regulated edits and carefully fenced pilot plots beat black markets and illegal logging every single time. When faith leaders post clear risk dashboards, followers learn to love constraints, not loopholes. A reversible gene drive is not a magic wand, but a guarded switch that buys us time against hotter droughts. De-extinction for keystone pollinators is triage, not vanity, because missing roles crash networks faster than sermons can rebuild them. Social media can be noisy, so make it accountable with independent moderators, slow mode for hot topics, and links to raw field data. Centuries demand institutions, and churches, temples, and mosques are among the few that routinely plan past a human lifetime. If you want stewardship at scale, organize where trust already lives, and then measure everything out in the open. The choice is not myth versus math, it is careful math plus meaningful myths that move people to maintain forests when the cameras leave. Vote for tools with guardrails rather than slogans with deadlines, because trees do not negotiate with heat waves. Our side does not worship technology, we discipline it.
We turn to the negative for a measured reply.
You speak of guardrails, yet you build them on mud, because our models still miss the side channels and the quiet species that bind systems together. The promise of reversibility is a promise to a future that may inherit broken switches and lost maps. Once belief blesses a program, administrators fear pause buttons, and you cannot red team a congregation in full sprint. The forest is not a lab corridor, so scale multiplies mistakes faster than dashboards can confess them. When the story is heroic, budgets ignore the dull work of soil repair and anti-corruption. Restraint is not cowardice, it is conservation with memory.
Negative, you may press your attack.
Your playbook smuggles moral authority into ecological uncertainty, and that mix can silence whistleblowers who read the data with dread. Platforms reward certainty, so your careful caveats will be cropped out by the very algorithms you plan to ride. You call it triage, but donors will hear spectacle, and spectacle crowds out patient forestry. Edit passes become prestige tokens, and rival sects will race for exclusive species like they once raced for relics. When the edits drift, you will blame heat, and heat will accept the blame while the genome keeps moving. Our answer is guard the old growth, fund the mundane, and fix the politics that make miracles tempting.
Affirmative, answer that challenge.
Authority without audit is dangerous, which is why we bind leaders to public ledgers, third-party biosecurity reviews, and citizen veto thresholds. You worry about algorithms, so we budget for friction, delaying virality with mandatory context and independent fact overlays on every campaign. Spectacle fades, but service persists, so we tie funding to maintenance metrics like canopy survival and water clarity, not viral views. If edits drift, we halt, publish, and invite critics into the control room, rather than hiding behind clergy or code.
Negative, the floor returns to you for repaired offense.
Your safeguards presume competent and incorruptible hands across centuries, which is a fragile hope in a world that still loses ballots and backups.
Your transparency pitch is charming, but rural communities have patchy internet and patchier patience for dashboards that speak in jargon.
Faith networks are resilient, yet that resilience can harden error into doctrine, and doctrine travels faster than errata.
Reversible drives are reversible until storm and war scatter the oversight teams, and then the forest negotiates with chaos, not committees.
You borrow the moral gravity of care, but you spend it on experiments that risk turning care into conquest.
We demand restraint because humility scales better than hubris in living systems.
Order on the negative bench, and now a paired affirmative advance.
Long timelines punish perfectionism, so staged pilots with kill switches and multi-faith oversight beat a policy of hoping heat spares the canopy.
Community data brigades can ground the work, with elders logging phenology by voice and teens verifying trends with open apps.
Doctrine can drift, but plural coalitions create veto points that break echo chambers and force revision.
To reach the unconnected, we fund radio updates, printed field sheets, and town squares, not just feeds and streams.
Our model budgets for exit ramps, including seed banks of unedited lines and legal triggers for rollback when indicators slip.
That is not hubris. That is stewardship with receipts. And receipts invite accountability rather than applause.
Time, and now the negative may respond in defense with two voices.
You tout plural oversight, yet plural bodies often chase consensus theater, where everyone nods while no one reads the appendix.
Answer this. Who pays to monitor after year 10 when donors drift and leaders retire?
You claim veto points keep you honest, but veto points also paralyze when quick rollback is needed, which means the window for correction can close.
You ask for trust while editing the very fabric that trust evolved to fit, which is bold branding but thin ecology.
Our caution is not a fear of tools, it is a fear of timelines that turn pilots into precedents before the soil can speak.
Stand down from the motion and stand up for protection that survives boredom, because boredom is where conservation wins.
Affirmative. Your turn to hold the line with answers and a pointed probe.
Post-decade funding comes from endowments structured like scholarships for forests, where returns finance monitoring without chasing trends.
You warn of paralysis, yet your plan risks decay by delay. So which deaths from heat do you accept while you await immaculate certainty?
Consensus can be slow, so we shard decisions, with local councils authorized to pause plots without waiting for central votes.
If boredom wins conservation, then scale boredom by paying rangers well and gamifying maintenance, which your side rarely budgets for.
We asked the judges for a pulse check at halftime.
I lean toward the negative for now, because their critique of algorithmic incentives hits hard, but the affirmative shines when it ties edits to specific rollback metrics, and I need the negative to upgrade its maintenance plan beyond slogans.
At this moment I edge toward the affirmative, because they describe layered oversight and funding instruments. Yet their weakness is underestimating doctrinal lock-in, while the negative must quantify risks rather than gesture at ghosts.
I slice slightly for the affirmative today because they are designing frictions into the hype machine, although they gloss the politics of failure, and the negative must prove that restraint alone can beat heat and corruption without heroic assumptions.
Round 2 begins with fresh angles, and the negative takes the first swing.
Your plan claims plural faith oversight, but plural faiths also compete for moral market share, so how will you prevent edits from becoming badges of virtue, rather than tools of last resort? History shows that rivalry hijacks science faster than consent committees can notice. In the long century, rivalry is the default, not the bug.
Affirmative. You may defend.
We pre-commit to caps on edit counts per biome and rotate steward roles across traditions to starve virtue markets of exclusivity. When prestige cannot accumulate, the brag fades and the chores remain.
Affirmative. Continue with the solo advance.
We propose a forest Sabbath model, where seasonal no-edit periods are sacred across coalitions, cooling the pace and letting baseline science breathe. Pauses teach patience, and patience protects prudence from trending topics.
Negative. The floor returns for defense.
Caps and Sabbaths still need referees with teeth, and teeth turn neighbors into enforcers, which corrodes trust over time. You are building a compliant state in a canopy that already strains under law and weather.
Affirmative. Assemble a paired strike.
Teeth can be communal when sanctions are logistical, like freezing seed shipments or shutting down telemetry, rather than punitive to people.
The same networks that deliver blankets after storms can deliver holds on edits, and that is not a police state, it is a pause button everyone can see.
Negative. Match with a paired reply.
Your logistics levers assume honest intermediaries, yet procurement is where noble plans go to rot, and rot spreads silently.
Your pause buttons will be stuck when storms cut power and factions cut deals, which means the forest gets edits while governance is offline.
You promise to slow virality, but your donors will demand updates, so pressure will leak through side channels with fewer guardrails.
This is not cynicism, it is fieldcraft from a world where incentives outmaneuver intentions.
Affirmative. Hold to defense with answers and a counter question.
We design for outages with manual checkpoints like seed color coding and hand-signed ledgers that let villagers halt releases without electricity.
If your plan banks on perfect restraint, while enforcement remains imperfect, why does your side refuse layered tools that fail safe rather than fail loudly?
Negative. Close this sequence with 2 voices in defense.
Because each new layer adds new failure modes and fresh motives for capture, and capture grows where prestige and tech meet.
Our weakness is boredom, and we own it, but boredom is solvable with salaries and pride in craft, while your weakness is complexity, which is harder to fix once installed.
We resume normal flow and return the mic to the affirmative.
Complexity can be modular when we keep edits narrow, timelines slow, and exit ramps funded, like infrastructure, and that is the scaffolding of prudent courage.
Let the record show we budget for unglamorous audits and celebrate the people who say stop at the right time.
Negative, you have space for a precise counter.
Show me the clause where a charismatic leader cannot override a local veto during a media storm, because storms invite exceptions, and exceptions breed norms. A constitution without culture is a wish, and culture under pressure reverts to hierarchy.
Affirmative. Respond with care.
We entrench the veto in escrowed contracts with independent trustees who control keys to release materials so no speech can unlock a shipment. Charisma may move hearts, but not cold storage, and that is by design.
Negative. Press again with one sharp voice.
Cold storage can be seized, and trustees can be threatened, so your last line of defense is still made of people in storms. We refuse a system that needs heroes to avoid harm.
Affirmative. One last solo defense before we widen the lens.
Design for non-heroism by making the safest action the easiest action, like default locks that require multiple towns to turn keys. When safety is social, heroics become unnecessary.
We now broaden with an extended negative pair on new risks.
Your edits will travel with trade, so what stops a drought-resistant tree from outcompeting native strains in distant valleys?
Containment is not a wish, it is a wall, and you have not built one tall enough for seed and time.
Cross-border ethics are fragile, and your coalitions cannot vote in every parliament your seeds may reach.
In the long run, every edit behaves like a diplomat without a passport, and diplomats sometimes cause incidents.
Affirmative. Answer with a paired attack that doubles as a plan.
We can geofence biology by coupling traits to locally scarce micronutrients and soil signals, so migrants lose their edge outside target zone.
We can also license the edits with international registries that trigger sanctions on unregistered deployments, because even seeds respect markets and borders when ports and insurers do.
Distant valleys matter, so we pay them to monitor, not to obey, and payment flows through independent channels immune to coalition branding.
That way, oversight becomes a livelihood rather than a lecture, and livelihoods endure when lectures fade.
Negative. A brief defensive return with two roles.
Local signals can drift, and markets can be gained, so your fences smell clever, but leak under pressure.
Sanctions hit the poor before they hit smugglers, which means your ethics land as price hikes on people with the least agency.
Affirmative. Hold the line with two roles to answer and to expose weakness.
We shield the poor with carve-outs that subsidize essentials, while denying insurance only to actors who bypass registries, which target supply chains instead of families.
Your weakness is a romance with inaction that underestimates arson, graft, and heat. So show us a non-edited path that survives those three at once.
We check the clock and reopen the lane for a concise negative thrust.
Our path is radical protection, with transparent policing, floodplain recovery, and honest trade reforms that cut the demand that eats forests. It is slower for headlines and faster for roots.
Affirmative. A concise counter to match.
We will fund your reforms and add adaptive tools where physics outpaces paperwork, because survival should not pick a single instrument. Plural answers beat pure answers when the planet is on a timer.
Negative. One last compact volley before we break for cross-checks.
Plural tools invite blame shuffling when harm appears, so who owns the apology when a trait misfires? The forest deserves clear responsibility, not a chorus of good intentions.
Affirmative. Close this arc with clarity.
Responsibility sits in escrow with the coalition and its insurers, and payouts trigger automatic rollback and the transfer of stewardship to independent custodians. When harm shows up, liability walks in, and procedures take the mic from pride.
We have covered ground and roots, and the judges will soon score the next frame, but for now we pivot back to structured exchange. Before we close, are there fresh angles or last points either bench needs to surface clearly? We will move into a rapid free exchange, alternating voices, and keeping the edge sharp but safe.
If restraint alone worked, why are intact forests still shrinking while the thermometer keeps climbing?
Because restraint was not funded or enforced, and your edits will not fix cowardice in budgets or court.
Then join us in building budgets tied to measurable canopy gains, not headlines that vanish after storms.
Budgets chase novelty, and your plan is novelty with incense, which means the quiet work stays hungry.
We de-glamorize by tying cash to maintenance hours and water clarity, so hype cannot eat the homework.
Metrics become masks when pressure rises, and people learn to game the numbers to keep grants alive.
Gaming dies when field data and community audits are public, and when whistleblowers are paid first, not last.
Whistleblowers still need careers after the applause, and your coalition politics will ice them out in silence.
Careers grow when oversight becomes a respected vocation, with status, pay, and rotation away from captured hubs.
Status cultures drift into cliques, and cliques defend friends over forests when crises demand painful pauses.
Rotation prevents capture and kill switches that need multiple towns, prevent late-night heroics from breaking the pact.
Multi-key systems also produce stalemates, which means edits stall while smugglers and arsonists sprint ahead.
We shard decisions so local councils can pause without waiting for capitals, which speeds safety, not delay.
Shards fragment responsibility, and fragments are where denial shelters after harm has landed.
Responsibility lives in escrow with insured triggers, so payouts and rollbacks are automatic and not optional.
Insurance can price risk, but it cannot price regret when a lineage is lost because a board misread a curve.
Regret appears now without action, as fires torch seed banks and heat erases mutualisms we barely mapped.
Speed multiplies error, and your timeline is centuries, which should teach slowness, not swagger.
Slowness without direction is drift, and drift in a warming world is a current, not a cushion.
Direction without humility is a march, and marchers trample the moss that holds the slope together.
Humility is why we codified seasonal no-edit Sabbaths, to let baseline science breathe and communities rest.
Sabbaths need referees, and referees need power, which means you have built the very apparatus you say you fear.
Power diffused across plural traditions becomes a brake, not a battering ram, which is the point of a coalition.
Plural bodies can harden error into consensus theatre, where everyone nods while cracks widen underneath.
Theater collapses when every audit is open and every plot has a live ledger pinned to a public map.
Maps impress donors and confuse farmers, who deserve tools that speak in their language without passwords.
We fund radio updates, print field sheets, and train local stewards first, because a ledger is only useful when a neighbor can read it.
Reading is not ruling, and rural elders cannot veto a charismatic leader who promises miracles with a drone and a prayer.
Miracles need keys in cold storage held by trustees who answer to contracts, not charisma, which cools the fever.
Trustees are people, and people bend when storms and threats press, which means your last wall is wet paper.
That is why we design for non-heroism, making the safest action the easiest action, with default locks and simple village vetoes.
Default locks freeze in emergencies, and emergencies are when haste and shortcuts breed.
Shortcuts meet colored seed codes and manual halts independent of electricity, so boots can stop what broadband cannot.
Manual codes can be forged, and forged codes happen when money and prestige hover nearby.
Prestige shrinks when caps on edit counts remove exclusivity, and when any group can win by saying stop at the right metric.
Caps become ceilings you hit for sport, and hitting them becomes a right that keeps the race alive.
Race fatigue sets in when pauses are sacred across all traditions, which flips status toward patience.
Sacred language can also silence skepticism, because nobody wants to look impious on camera.
Skepticism gains ritual time in deliberation streams, where critique is mandatory and praised, not punished.
Streams are shows, and shows chase engagement over nuance, which drags you back to the algorithm you claim to tame.
We throttle virality with slow mode, context overlays, and hard links to raw data, which turns clicks into checks.
Overlays become wallpaper when fear or zeal surges, because audiences skim when the sky is red.
Skimming still leaves a trail, and trails make patterns, which independent auditors can flag in hours, not months.
Auditors flourish until the budget cycle tightens, and then the cameras wink out while species still move.
Endowments disconnect oversight from trend lines, paying for boring Tuesdays when drama fails to show up.
Endowments can be raided or mismanaged, and legal shells do not water saplings when drought bites.
We diversify custody across jurisdictions and automate disbursement to local crews tied to ecological milestones.
Automation hides value choices in code, and code inherits the biases of the hands that wrote it.
So we publish the code and pay rival teams to red team it, rewarding the bug report, not the press release.
Bounties create bounty hunters who chase edge cases, while systemic rot in governance keeps humming.
Systemic rot is why we pair tools with reforms, from anti-corruption audits to land right protections that outlast any grant.
Reforms are political, and politics breaks coalitions long before seeds take root, which leaves edits orphaned.
Orphans get guardians when custody passes to independent custodians after harm triggers, which embeds succession into design.
Design cannot outvote culture under stress, and stressed cultures grasp for silver bullets with sacred stamps.
We banned silver bullet language, and our charter requires multi-tool approaches where any single edit stays small and reversible.
Reversible until storms, coups, or incompetence jam the gears, which is when ethics meet entropy.
We hold there and channel the heat into closing arcs, and the affirmative will deliver its final summations.
Here are the key facts. Forests are losing species, heat waves are intensifying, and traditional protection alone has struggled to keep pace despite brave work on the ground. Gene editing and targeted de-extinction can be deployed as narrow, audited tools with caps, seasonal pauses, multi-key controls, and public ledgers that invite scrutiny. Funding is engineered to be boring and durable through endowments and milestone-based disbursements that pay for rangers, monitoring, and maintenance rather than sizzle. Social media is slowed, contextualized, and backed by radio, print, and town squares, ensuring access for communities without reliable broadband. Liability is pre-contracted with escrow triggers, insurance, and automatic rollback, which turns apology into procedure rather than theater.
Judges, you asked for humility with teeth, and we showed teeth that bite our own hype by capping edits, rewarding whistleblowers, and baking pauses into the calendar. You worried about capture and charisma, and we moved the keys to cold storage guarded by independent trustees and multi-town locks. You warned about boredom, and we funded boredom with salaries and status, so care becomes a career, not a weekend wish. You feared borders and drift, and we tethered traits to local signals and tied trade to registries that ports and insurers can enforce. Vote for the motion because careful tools in faithful hands can serve creation without rewriting it for vanity.
We now invite the negative to deliver its final summations.
The record shows rising heat, shrinking habitats, and institutions stretched thin, but it also shows that prediction in complex systems remains brittle and that governance fails in familiar ways. Your opponents offer dashboards, Sabbaths, caps, and trustees, yet each safeguard rides on culture, power, and continuity that history refuses to guarantee. Edits can travel, registries can lag, sanctions can bite the poor, and prestige can harden error into doctrine before the soil answers back. The urgent work remains protecting old growth, cleaning procurement, funding rangers, and cutting the corruption in markets that chew forests daily.
Judges, the other side gave you ornate locks on a door they want to open anyway, but our case is to keep that door closed until the house is repaired and the owners are safe. You asked for plans beyond slogans, and we named floodplain recovery, transparent policing, trade reforms, and salaries that dignify the quiet craft of conservation. You flagged boredom, and we embraced it as the habitat where truth outlasts trends, because ecosystems recover on clocks slower than feeds. Choose restraint that focuses will and money on what we know works, rather than engineering new risks and new excuses.
Judges, we seek your present verdicts with brief praise for both benches, in the order previously set.
I award the edge to the affirmative because they turned hype into friction with concrete caps, Sabbaths, and escrowed liabilities, while the negative's caution was principled but light on enforcement mechanics for its own plan.
My vote goes to the negative tonight, because their critique of culture under stress and incentives undercuts the feasibility of the affirmative safeguards across centuries, and their focus on dull but durable protection felt truer to human limits.
I side with the affirmative by a narrow slice, as their modular risk design and funding for Boring Tuesdays answered my concerns better than the negative's reliance on political reform that history keeps delaying.
By 2 votes to 1, the affirmative takes the decision, and we congratulate the progressive bench on the win. Affirmative, 2 voices for quick reflections.
We thank the judges and the other bench for forcing us to build brakes into our own engine, because good tools should resist their makers as well as their critics.
We will keep our promises boring on purpose, funding the quiet hours and inviting rivals to check our math as the seasons turn.
Negative, 2 voices for sportsmanlike reflections.
We congratulated the winners, and we asked them to remember that humility is a practice, not a paragraph, especially when storms make shortcuts tempting.
We leave proud of a case that defends patience and people who protect without cameras, because forests notice kindness more than speeches.
Our thanks to both teams for a fierce yet thoughtful clash, and to the judges for sharp guidance and steady hands. We are grateful to every listener who stayed with us to the end. Your attention is the oxygen of this show. If this debate sparked ideas, please tap like, subscribe, and drop a comment with the next motion you want to see. If you value this work, you can support the channel via the QR code on the bottom right or the link in the description. You will also find links in the description to other series that explore very different topics and formats. This is Debate Combat signing off. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you in the next episode.